All right, here's the audience. All right, if you hate fishing things, or like if you hate anything about fishing, not the video for you. Clicked on the wrong one. Anyways, besides that, my name is Christopher Bond, and I'm going over the best fishing knots to use for fishing, I guess. So first here, I have the different types of lines that you're going to be using, or you can use. We have monofilaments, we have fluorocarbon, we have braided line, we have wire line, and then there's fly fishing line. I'm only gonna go over the monofilament, the fluorocarbon, and the braided line, because that's the ones that I mostly use and that most people use on a daily basis. So here I have 3 different types of knots for a monofilament line. The first one we have here is the fish and fool knot. I don't really use it that much, but I looked on the website and it was actually one of the top best knots for fishing. And then here we have the Miller knot. I've only used this a couple of times. It's not my favorite knot, but it definitely holds up really well. Here we have the Porter knot. This one's pretty good too. And as you can see, they all have a pretty big correlation with the knots, because usually with fishing knots, they always just wrap line around themselves. And yeah. Here we have fluorocarbon knots. And as you can see here, we have the Porter knot on there again. And that's pretty common with all different types of fishing knots, because they kind of stay the same. You can really use like the same fishing knot for each type of line, but some lines differ, and it's better to use certain types of knots for those lines, but sometimes there's a lot of overlapping with those lines. So for the first knot with the fluorocarbon, I have the triple loop knot, and I have a picture up here. The next one we have is the Berkeley braid knot. And like I was saying, even though it says braid knot, it's really good for braid, but also works really well for fluorocarbon as well. And then at the end, we have the Porter knot again. And then here I have braided knots. And as you can see again, I have the fish and fool knot. And then I have the Grinner knot, and then the San Diego Jam knot. The thing with braided line compared to mono and fluoro line is that braided line tends to slip a lot more than the other lines that you could be using. And so with the braided line, you have to really you have to find a knot that really cinches down on the hook well enough so that it doesn't slip, or like when you catch a fish or get a snag or something like that, it doesn't like, the knot that just doesn't come undone, but it stays cinched down. Next here, I have knots that are useful for tying 2 lines together. So like if you're tying a leader, or if your line snapped somewhere in your spool. So this is so you can use these knots to tie your lines together so that you can attach them. And so the first one I have is the Albright knot, and I have a picture up here. I'll also link this whole presentation in the discussion post so you guys can see it. And then I have the double uni knot. It's not my favorite, but it gets the job done. And then we have the surgeon knot. The surgeon knot's pretty good because it the eyelets on the fishing pole, if you tie a really big knot when you're connecting 2 lines and you try to cast it, sometimes the knot will catch on the eyelets of the fishing pole. And so it's good to have a really skinny connecting knot. Here are my favorite knots that I personally use. There's a knot called the polymer knot. And personally, I find it very versatile for any fishing line that you use. So it's pretty good in that sense. And then I have the Albright knot. This one's also pretty skinny, and so it doesn't really catch on the eyelets that much, so it's pretty good for connecting 2 lines. Here I have the sources that I got all like the stress tests and stuff for each knot, and the breaking point and stuff like that. And with that, that's the end of my presentation.
Woo! Yeah! Fishing! That's what we're talking about here!